Vestal, and I'm the artistic director at Raven Theater.
Hey, I'm Cole Van Glon. I'm Raven's artistic producer.
Wardell Julius Clark, director of Hoodoo Love.
Jeffrey Levin, sound designer and composer for Hoodoo Love.
Shariba Rivers, I played Candy Lady.
Sydney Lynn, scenic designer for Hoodoo Love.
Great, thank you all so much for joining us today. So my thought was that we should check in with those who were nominated for a Jeff Award. So congratulations, Sydney and Shariba and Jeffrey, on your nominations for Hoodoo Love. And I thought that it'd be great to see Wardell Julius Clark again and have him chat with us a little bit about what went into making this stunning production that I'm extremely proud of. Wardell, I'd like to start with you. One of the biggest jobs that a director has to do is pick their team. How did you come to pick these individuals to work with you on this play?
That's a great question, Cody. These three particular individuals, in fact, Sydney and I first worked together on the Watsons Go to Birmingham at Chicago Children's Theater. She was O'Neill's associate scenic designer there, and then I just like fell in love with her, fell in love with the way she worked, and then like just was like, I don't know any other young Black women scenic designers in the city, so I want you to do my next 3 shows. And we just had like such a great conversation and working repertoire. After we did his Shadow, I was like super, we just kind of start to like build one, and as I have another show come in, say, okay, now we're gonna do Hoodoo, then we're gonna do Sheepdog, and we just have a really, really great rapport of how we work, and my crazy visions, Sydney can design a million different ways and gives me a million options for the thing, culminating in her gorgeous set design for Hoodoo Love. So it was a no-brainer for me to hire her for this show, particularly also because this is a show about Black women, written by a Black woman. It was to our privilege and advantage to have a Black woman craft the literal physical world of the play. And then Jeffrey, who I had not worked with before Hoodoo Love, but I fell in love with Jeffrey's sound design for a lot of shows, but the one that I often talk about is his sound design for a Shane O'Mero at Timeline Theater, where I'm a company member, which was absolutely stunning. He composed this opening, like, it's like an opus to me because I still hear all of it, Jeffrey. It was one of the most beautiful pieces of sound composition that I had ever heard, culminating with all of these things, and then it focused in to like a knock on a door that was transferred to the actor actually knocking on the door. And like, I very rarely in any play do like 3 minutes into a play, I pick up the program again to look and see who the sound designer is. And that is what I did. And I was, Jeffrey, got it. And the first moment that I had to hire him, I sought to do that with Hoodoo and Kill Move Paradise back at Timeline, because I think he is a sonic genius. And then the great Shariba Rivers, Shariba auditioned for the play, as she does, because we like to give everyone an opportunity. Shariba was who I had in mind for Candy Lady. Shariba worked with me on my first play ever that I ever directed, Insurrection Holding History, about 3 years ago now. And we kind of just like artistically fell in love on that first production. And anytime that I get to work with Shariba Rivers, I want to work with Shariba Rivers. Like, I like that. It's a no-brainer to me. She's one of the greatest actors that we have in the city. And we also have such a specific rapport for how we work together. And I often joke that I'm a lazy director because I don't really like to direct. I like to stage and craft and allow actors to do what they do. And Shariba is one of those incredible artists who I don't often have to say much to. And it is exactly like, you know, the intention, like literally the cadence, the delivery, the thing that I am often after, she gives so naturally. And then if we're adjusting or working on something, I never really have to say a lot of words to Shariba. Regina and my former assistant Sophie tells the story about one Saturday where I was talking to Shariba about something, and I like did a gesture and made a sound, and she said, got it. And then like literally took the adjustment, and it was exactly perfect. That is a rare thing for any artist to be able to communicate that way. So again, it is a privilege and an honor have her truly as our root of Hoodoo Love. It is the root performance of that play that grounded the whole play. And I am just so pleased that these three lovely artists were recognized and nominated for their work, because it is beyond deserved.
Awesome. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the process, because I think that's a big part, obviously, of making art and getting to where we go. And oftentimes the artistic process starts visually, right? A lot of artists work that way in theater. And so Sydney, I was just wondering if you can run us through kind of the soup to nuts, shall we say, of like how you started working with Wardell to craft this, things that happened along the way, and sort of where you ended up to create the set that people got to experience.
Sure. So one of the great things about working with Wardell as a director is that the experience of the play is more than just the space that we're in. We're considering all of the different elements kind of together in this like hodgepodge of like the actual storytelling. And I think that when Wardell and I first met, it was really about like, what is the actual like experience and moment that we want to communicate throughout the show? And then kind of looking at the visual elements afterwards and like considering like, okay, so we do need a house, we do need a shack. We do want the shack to fall. That's the big moment. Like Wardell said, we have to make it fall. And I said, got it. We're not doing like little lighting gestures or not doing whatever, we're making it come to the ground. And I think that one of the things that I really focused on in designing was kind of looking to incorporate both the elements of the realism and the context of Beale Street and the blues and just the Great Depression era, and also kind of bringing in those more magical elements like the hoodoo, like the actual energy that the space gives. And what kind of came from that was actually the combination and kind of like an impression of both those worlds kind of colliding.
Jeffrey, we're going to turn our focus a little bit to sound and original music. One of the things I was thinking about is, my guess is that most patrons who enter a theater probably don't even know what original music is. So can you talk a little bit about what is the difference between sound design and original music, and what you specifically did to write original music for our production of Hoodoo Love?
Yeah, sure. You're totally right that it's often hard to kind of discern between the two categories, and they blur together a lot. And I do think of sound and music together in a lot of ways. I mean, I think sound design is almost a kind of synonym for composition. It's organizing sound, which is what music is. So so I try to combine those elements, and I make them try to fit together rather than trying to think that they need to be separate elements. And I think, like, there are good examples of that in this play, particularly with the merging that Sydney started to talk about with the realism and the magic element of it. I think that was definitely on my mind throughout the composition process for this show, where a texture of wind or wind chimes or animals in the background, like that to me could function as instruments in a piece of music, or maybe thinking more concretely about what we traditionally think of as musical textures, in picking my palette. it seemed obvious to me that guitar was important for the show because of Ace's character, and a little bit of piano, but those were mostly because piano was actually in the show as well. So those were the two only acoustic instruments that I chose, and then the rest of it was coming from this magical landscape, whether it was part of the nature of the environment, or maybe it was more abstract kind of tones that we weren't able to discern exactly what it was. So that was the kind of spectrum that I was working with the composition, is thinking how to use natural and unnatural sounds together, whether that's a musical instrument or, a realistic sound or something we can't quite discern. So I think that was kind of the landscape that I was working in.
Cool to get to hear, more specifically than I had heard before, because I was looking at it too, the sounds of like, oh, that's right, in this moment it is the chirp of a bird and the chime from the wind and the voice of this woman, and he has taken those notes and blended them into an instrument that he himself created. Was a really neat experience for me, not being a sound designer, to get to see that more specifically.
Yeah, and I should mention just an extra level of my work on this project was in coordination with the music director, Ricky, who worked a lot with the cast on that particular piece of music that you're talking about. And then it was kind of passed off to me, and then, I made it into kind of a elevated thing, and that particular piece of music is a good example of what I was talking about, of the merging of nature and magic and realism. So yeah,
and I think that conversation is interesting, right, between design and actors. I think is a really interesting conversation that is kind of opaque once the play is up. And of course, we have someone here who was part of that conversation. So Shariba, one of the things that I think was really striking about Candy Lady as a character is, complicated is a really simple way of saying it, but we see her do things that I think all of us are concerned by as people, right? Like the end of Act 1, we see her make a decision that maybe we don't understand and is concerning and doesn't line up with the goodness that we see in her in other moments. And so I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how you as an actor balanced the dark and the light of this character and the way that she moved through the world.
A lot of that had to do with conversations with Wardell. That actual specific moment was troubling to me as well. And then we had to sit down and talk and probably cry about the legacy of slavery and what that did to African Americans. And specifically, when we talked about Candy Lady, we talked about the fact that Candy Lady came from slavery, and one of the things that kind of she holds on to is that she couldn't have helped in that the physical moment of what was going on. What she could do was help after that moment was over. And that's what the elder women did in those communities. There's no way they could have stopped the beatings from happening. What they could do is sit in the cabin and wait until that person was brought back, and then they dealt with salving the wounds and dressing the wounds and making sure that that person was nursed back to health. And so part of that particular moment was getting stuck in that horrific past of there's no way I can move my feet. If I move my feet now, we both die. Whereas if I stand still, I can help, bring her out of this. And so a lot of dealing with Candy Lady was, leaning on our history, our understanding of that history, and, having someone like Wardell to, the moment that I think Wardell is talking about is actually the Sarah moment. It was a story that I had to tell about my child, one of the children that I lost and that died. And Wardell looked at me and said, Shariba, and it was something about that it took the storytelling for that particular moment from I'm telling this story to I'm reliving this story to I'm giving this story to you for a reason. And I can't do anything but echo or kind of reciprocate what Wardell said. I don't know very many people that I would just automatically say yes to and want to work with. Wardell just has a sense of seeing things and feeling things and a way of getting in the way and out of the way at the same time that is so incredible and so helpful. And he's not afraid to let you play, and I play. I'm kind of weird. I play a lot. And, pull me back if I go too far, but I will go too far. You tell me to go, I'm going to go. And then you just bring me back. And fortunately, I've been able to work with Wardell and he's let me do that. I was actually told that I was too young to play this role. And I was, at my age, thank you. I'll take that. And when Catherine called me in for it, they made it very clear that Wardell wanted me to sing, because Catherine knows that singing is not my thing. And I automatically said, I'm not going to get this part, Catherine. I don't sing. And they said, this is not my request. This is Wardell's request. So just come. But balancing all of that, a lot of that had to do with having such a great relationship with Wardell and just being able to talk to him about it and bring her. I loved her a lot. So,
I have to jump in here for a second. I have to jump in here for a second because Shariba, and that is the moment that it was the Sarah monologue. First of all, I don't know. Most of us don't know many actors that you can make a sound and a gesture to, and they like recalibrate an entire monologue. Like that is almost unfathomable and unheard of. But yeah, and the moment at the end of Act One, Cole, that you mentioned, we did actually sit down and talk and cry about it because it is a traumatic understanding of something that is real and it exists in our DNA now in a lot of ways. And so as artists, as Black artists telling this story, agreeing to this story in this moment, we have to acknowledge what is in order to tell the truth of it. Because the moment is hard for me on the page. I think it's hard for anyone to look and not have a visceral reaction of wanting to go do the thing. But that is just not the history of our people here. And so it was more about just us acknowledging what is and why that is and how we got to that beautiful moment and that stunning production photo that Michael took of Shariba in that. It's one of the most gorgeous photos of Sydney Set and of Shariba is that moment. And I love that it lives forever in that way because of what we found and what we crafted. And as far as Shariba playing, Yeah, I don't really tell Shariba no. We calibrate every now and again, but like that's pretty much what we do, calibrating, because and I enjoy. I just said this on a podcast I recorded an hour ago. They asked me what did I love most about the actor director process, and I said my favorite thing is trust. Like my favorite thing is trust. I trust my actors. Now I will get it. Like she said, I'll get in the way if I have to. But I trust my actors implicitly that who they are and their whole being is enough for the portrayal of the thing, and that is absolutely true, Shariba. So most of it is just like, yeah, go play. Like I didn't have that idea, but that works just fine. Yep, hold on, keep moving. So that's kind of how we play together.
Shariba may think that she can't sing, but in that audition, I remember she came in, she did the sides, and then she sings, and Wardell looks at me like, well, I guess she can sing. So, and anybody who saw the play also knows that, she's not too bad. Shariba, can you talk a little bit more about who is Candy Lady and what it meant for you to play that character?
Every night before the show, I would warm up in the hallway, and then I'd spend the last couple of minutes calling on the ancestors and asking permission to bring Candy Lady to life, asking for their covering, their blessing, and asking that they work through me to do justice by her. I am from Louisiana. I grew up saying very much what Tulu said, that, don't nobody believe in all that. And my folks would say, well, it believe in you, so you don't have to worry about that. So Candy Lady, some kind of way is in my blood, being from Louisiana, being from the South, being African, being a woman. And so it was incredibly special. It was an incredible honor to be able to bring those words for Candy Lady, who was, I think I finally read a review and somebody may have referred to her as, I don't know if they called her like a huckster or a con woman or something like that, but I was almost offended. I was like, Candy Lady, there's no such thing. I mean, and she wasn't. I especially now growing into who I am now, I firmly believe that Candy Lady was a doctor, and she was a nurse, and she was a spiritualist, and she was, people may have called her a witch. I think all of those things apply to her. She was a mother. And I think mother encompasses a whole bunch of things, even without having her own birthed children. She was a mother. And I think there is God in moms. And so, if you can't make her anything else, if you can't just put one term to her, I think the term to put for her would be mother.
True. I could listen to you talk about creation forever. I also love, Wardell is one of the most expressive people I've ever worked with in my life. And so the tenets of a Zoom call where he has to be muted, but is still like doing his thing is like the greatest thing to watch. Like this performance, I would nominate this performance for a Jeff any day of the week. It's amazing. So we've talked a lot about the different ways that pieces come together, right? And I think one that isn't always obvious is how sound and set work together. And I think what's funny, right, is like if you look at the center of it, there's lights. And it's pretty easy to see how set and lights work together. It's pretty easy to see how lights and sound work together. But I think one of the things that Wardell said at the beginning of this conversation was how important, well, Wardell and Sydney actually said at the beginning of this conversation was how important the atmosphere was. And when you really talk about atmosphere, that is what you see and what you hear, because that's what creates what you feel, right? And so I'm wondering, Sydney and Jeffrey, can you give us a little insight into how the two of you created together.
One of the striking features of the set was the railroad tracks that curved around into this kind of spiral, and that was like an immediate invitation to elevate beyond like just pure naturalism. So that was a very exciting metaphor for me, and kind of opened up the space in terms of how I was thinking about what I can provide. Just thinking of all the details that were suggested by the set, and also like either that we can actually see and then I can kind of bring out a little bit, or things that were suggested that you can't quite see that I can then add on as a layer to the set.
So it was just a really great experience to be able to like bounce ideas off each other. And I think the train explicitly was kind of the first connection point that we had, where we were like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're gonna bring in this train, this like train imagery. We're gonna bring in this kind of like natural world versus like the realistic world. We're gonna have them run into each other. They're gonna collide. They're gonna blend. They're gonna do all of those things. And so I think Wardell also like really facilitated these conversations too. Because his kind of motive, or his like thought work behind it was that like we are existing very much in a world that was then in a realistic time period. We're also existing in the world of like Black women connecting, Black women and their experience in the world, Black women kind of in the South. Like, what does that look like? Alongside our experience of like, where are we now? And like, how have we changed now? And have we changed now? And all of those things are kind of layered on top of each other. And so kind of in our creation of all of the different elements, the lighting, the sound, the set, all of that was working with layers and kind of building up the world so that it could expand as large as it needed to go.
In terms of sound, music, and set matching together, a very specific moment was the house falling down. And that was definitely some surgical choreography between stage management, set, sound, lights. And so all of that had to work together to create something like it was already stunning to see a massive piece of the set fall down, but we just knew that we can take it even further. And so me understanding how the set was breaking from a kind of backstage technical point of view, what we were seeing from a storytelling point of view helped me kind of pinpoint how I needed to amplify that, and what moments needed to be accented, and how that's in step with what's happening technically with the set.
I remember like when you and I first sat down in the theater together and you were like, can we drop a roof? I was like, yeah, we can drop a roof. Let's drop a roof. And then Bobby, our technical director, figured out some really lovely engineering. But I remember the first time we tested it, I put myself under it before we put anybody else under it. And it was deafening, just horrifyingly loud. And I think that's one of the things that's exciting about the way these things piece in together is like, there was a noise already there, right? Like the thing fell and made a noise. The planks fell and made a noise. And then Jeffrey took that and was like, great. That's a starting point. Here's more texture, right? And then Sim, our lighting designer, who is also nominated, though not for Hoodoo Love, but fantastic lighting designer, right? Took another whole layer to build on top of that. And that's not even talking about all of the other wonderful performers and designers and technicians working on this show. But I do think that moment, Jeffrey, I love that you brought it up because it was kind of an ultimate culmination of, I think, every piece of collaboration in theater was required to make that moment work, and to make it possible at Raven. And so I personally am just grateful that we had the opportunity and the artistic drive from all of you to like achieve that goal in our space. I think was really exciting.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was thinking about the thing that Sydney said and the thing that Jeffrey said about in that first production meeting, Cole, is that my intention and concept for Hoodoo Love was that we're doing a revival, but it should not feel like a revival. It should feel completely current and contemporary in every other sense other than what the play actually is, and other than it being a period piece. It should feel completely contemporary. So I remember telling Sydney that like the set should look like what it is, but it should be stunning and gorgeous. Like, you know, there's a thing of like nice, nasty, and pretty ugly, right? And so that's like there, you know, I think I even used that word of pretty ugly. Like it is the ruins of what the thing is, but to behold her set is a stunning piece of work. It really, really is. And talking with Jeffrey and Sim about the lighting and sound qualities of the world, that, you know, there is a lot of freedom. There has to be a lot of freedom, because to reinvent a revival, I feel like all last season about Beyonce's Homecoming, and the fact that like the HBCU band and like the halftime show is as old as HBCUs, but the way she reinvented that for Homecoming on Netflix seemed as if none of us had ever seen that before, and we've seen that at every halftime football show for hundreds of years, literally. But it's about taking that thing and putting a different kind of gloss on it, and while doing that, telling a different kind of truth. And that was the overall intention of the production, which I think manifested gorgeously in all of these artists' work.
Riddell, are there any other final thoughts about any of the elements to make this play that you'd like to leave us with?
I'm just really proud, Cody. If I'm being honest, I'm just like really proud of the production. I'm sure Sharif will remember this, but after closing, I like came backstage and I just like bawled to those four actors. I literally was almost inconsolable, just like bawling, because I hadn't seen the show for a few weeks, and you know shows grow, but it all of the elements and every part of it was just far beyond my capacity to what I thought I could envision happening for that play. I was just so pleased and proud, and every single designer, every single actor, every single technician, from Bobby to Lucy to Elizabeth, like every single person, Rachel and her team, every single person was so integral in the way the story played out. You know, I don't really do long plays. And this is like, you know, I love 90 minutes. We're gonna get it all in and we're gonna get out of there and deal with our feelings afterwards. But this is not one of those plays. It's a classic 2-act play. Um, and I had to work on it differently, because it's like working on a musical, because there's choreography here and there's song here and then there's intimacy here and there's dance here and there's music and guitar in the play. Like, there's so many elements to this play. And I, you know, personally, I felt a little like, thank God for Cody and Cole, who are a great team at Raven, who literally, like, pretty like snatched me up and was like, "It's going fine. What are you worried about? It's all gonna work out." I was just like, because of the way that as Shariba knows, the way I like to work, I move very fast, and the play was asking something else of me and of all of us, and I had to like give over to the thing that it was asking. So I'm just like super, super proud of everyone's work, in particular Jeffrey, Shariba, and Sydney, who knocked it out of the ballpark and deserved to be celebrated, as does this gorgeous production that was hosted at Raven.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your artistic talents with us at Raven and the audience at Raven. And the Jeff Awards are on June 8th, and I hope that all three of you win. And thank you all for joining us today.